Hi. So, this is the video series where we like to pose the question. Hey, Nick,
Yes.
have you seen Strange Days?
Well, I have now.
Okay. Well, just to be clear, that's not the actual name of the bit. It's just have you seen?
Have you
But
seen? Yes.
Strange Days is the movie. It's one of the ones that I had watched back in the day. It's one of those movies that when it's on TV, I always have to stop and watch it because I think that series is just amazing. It's one of Rafe Fiennes. It says Ralph. Clearly says Ralph, but Rafe. It's one of his best movies in my opinion. But what did you think?
You know, well, I guess first off, we'll be talking about this movie in depth. It's from '95. So spoilers, I guess, for a 20-something-year-old movie.
Well, if you're a 20-something-year-old person, you probably are not aware of this movie.
Which
So,
I don't. I think you talked to me about it like once years ago, and had you seen this movie before? And I'm like, no, I hadn't seen it. And then you're like, oh, okay, you should watch it. And that was back in the day before streaming and stuff. So I just never watched it.
Nick, I think I just found like the new threshold of spoilers. Like, okay, the movie came out in 85, 95.
'95.
So there would be an excuse that if you were my age and you haven't seen that movie, it's like, well, you have no excuse because,
Yeah.
But like people who are like in their 20s,
It's like, how can I watch this movie?
right? It's
If you can't like stream it, are you gonna go to like find a DVD? Who has DVD players nowadays? I know we do, because we bought a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays, and then streaming became a thing. So we keep our players in order to watch our collection.
I have like 7 Black Rays. I don't have anything that can run them, but
Yeah.
I have them.
But if you don't have a thing that like nowadays, if you can stream movies on your phone. Why do you need a Blu-ray player?
If you're a kid, spoilers. If you're my age,
Get over it.
go watch the damn movie or just shut it off now.
Yeah.
But okay,
So I enjoyed the movie.
yeah.
I guess, but like when the end credits came up and it said produced by James Cameron, I was like, oh wow, okay,
That surprised you?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's one of his lesser known movies. I wonder which one. I'm pretty sure he did Terminator first.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Terminator was before '95.
Yeah.
That was an '80s movie.
Yeah. Well,
I think
James
Aliens
Cameron wrote it, but it was actually
It was produced by
Yeah.
James Cameron.
But it was directed by Catherine Bigelow, and that's if you were to hold a gun to my head and tell me another movie she's done at this point, I don't believe I could do that. But
No, I've gotten better with actors over time. I'm still not great with directors and stuff.
she did The Hurt Locker.
I've never seen that one.
Hey Nick, have you seen The Hurt
Oh,
Locker? It's a really good movie.
I've not seen a lot of movies. This series is going to be so much easier on Lance than it is on me until you think about all the weird, obscure movies Lance is going to have to see, because he's seen all the normal ones I've seen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say my palette in movies is pretty expansive, but
But
there's
just
quite a bit of the niche stuff that I have not seen. But anyways, let's gush about.
Okay. So I didn't really necessarily write down too much because, like, when we watched Fright Night, I'd watched it, and then knowing I needed to talk about it, I'm like, well, let me watch it again and write down some notes. So the second time I watched it with more of a critical eye and wrote down a bit more nitpicky stuff just to kind of have something to talk about. It was going to be our first recording. I wanted to have a plethora of notes.
Sure.
This time I just kind of sat and watched it. And I imagine if I went back and watched it again, not having to pay as much attention to the storyline, I could spend more time like taking notes and stuff.
Mm.
So I wrote down a few things. I guess notably it being taking place in '99, when the movie would have come out in '95, which means they're thinking in 4 years' time, here's what the technology is going to be like. They were mighty optimistic, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I did notice that as well, but like they didn't go for too much of a stretch. Like,
I assume so they didn't have to spend as much money in the budget, because you could
Yeah.
keep cars and guns and the fashion all looking 90s, but then just say, it's 4 years in the future, and they came out with the I'm going to keep calling it Brain Dance because the last thing I played was Cyberpunk, but it was something else. What's it called?
so I know that
I know there's Blackjack was the bad ones.
so blackjacks are the bad ones. Basically, it was
Squid.
yeah. The squid was
Is-
the
was the-
unit
was
that
the-
goes
was
on
the
your
unit.
head.
I'm gonna be so bad at remembering the name of what it was because other things have done it so many times. I'd heard of it as BTLs or Beatles,
Right.
then as Brain Dance as being the most recent. So this concept, if I'd watched it in '95, it would have been new and interesting to me. Now it's just kind of like, oh, I like that concept. I've seen stories told with this genre before, essentially.
Right.
So I could kind of get into it without them needing to explain it, which they have to explain at the beginning because this is a new concept. But when you've kind of now it's 2021, you know what a brain dance is, you know what BTL is,
Well, I think
which is better than life.
so. The brain dance. What I liked about the what they did in the Shadowrun game, and then what they did in this movie, like I think they took it to another level in Strange Days because it was literally like people, like you could feel what was going on in their skin. You could do this or you do that. With the brain dance, it's like you could wander around the room and like listen to all the different things and listen to the phone that's over here, but like you were getting like this person's perspective.
Well, in Shadowrun, the BTL stuff is people are implanted with a sim rig, and then it records everything that they feel.
Right.
And even with in the brain dances, they record that stuff so people can feel it. The reason why you don't feel it so much in the game is because you're pulling back and watching it from a distance. Where like when you live through it, that's why they have like those snuff BTLs to kind of be like, what's it feel like to be tortured and murdered? What's it feel like to have a magnet pull all of your cybernetics out through your face?
Right.
It's there so you can feel it. So I mean, that concept exists in plenty of media.
But who did it first?
I don't know. Shadowrun came out in the 70s, 80s.
So 74, 84. I think Shadowrun came out around like 85, 80. No, like around 88.
Which would have been, and Cyberpunk was out before that, right?
So I was 15 when I started playing that game over at Carrie's house with Ralph running the game. So I was around 16 years old.
And Cyberpunk was before Shadowrun.
Yes, Cyberpunk had been around for Shadowrun.
From like 77, I think.
Maybe.
It's something early.
Yeah.
So I think those concepts probably exist before this movie. But had it been done like in media before that? Probably not.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing I really loved about the movie. Like the very first time Lenny's watching like them rob the restaurant and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like I just love the idea where they kind of like they bring you in raw, where it's kind of like, okay, you're getting the experiences. You want to rob a bank, you want to do this, like you can do all this stuff. And then the first time the guy gets offed, and then you find out there's another whole dimension. Yeah. That people watch Rotten. It's essentially it's the rotten.com of like, videos. But I suppose back then that to me was like a new idea. Yeah. And, also the idea of like addiction to where like you get your own memories, like the dude.
He records his own memories and he's addicted to the past.
And it's really weird, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, I guess to me, tantamount that's to people doing this at concerts. You're experiencing it, but for some reason you still have to record it on your phone where you can't just be in the moment.
I mean, are you really going to watch that recording again or just...
And are you going to get as much joy out of it?
Just live it, and it's going to fade from your brain in time, and that's okay. It's like Mace, Angela Bassett's character said, like, memories are meant to fade.
Yeah, I mean, if you experience the most wonderful thing, then I mean, like everything else is going to dull in comparison.
Yeah, if you are able to record your best day ever and view it whenever you want, the rest of your life is going to suck because you're always going to be comparing it to that, that best day ever. Yeah. Whereas if you let that memory fade, it'll be replaced by a new best day ever. And likewise, the worst days ever will be replaced with new worst days ever.
Yeah, it's... So, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Please continue. I mean, we're still talking about the movie.
Yeah, but like...
But I suppose, like, the movie takes place in 99. It was out in 95, and they were looking at it in 4 years. I guess I kind of wish they bumped it up to, like, 2015 or something like that. So they could have gone a bit more, essentially cyberpunk. And it's futuristic with the world, which is not futuristic. It's kind of the same as it was, but worse, because rioting and the racial tensions and stuff are just kind of at more of a peak.
Right.
But it's still just the world as it was, but with the squids.
They could have put it in 2021 and everybody would be like, man, that movie was right on.
So I mean, it's not necessarily that you kind of like go watch. What was it? Demolition Man, and they're like 30 years in the future, and you watch it and you're like, yeah, we're not. They were very off, but it's just the fact that they've kind of set it far enough in the future that they can twist and kind of mess with the future a bit. They didn't set it that far, so they didn't really do anything with technology. And I just kind of there was the movie in my head where I'm like, man, it would be so cool if it was set in a cyberpunk future with kind of like neon lights everywhere and like like futuristic cars and
augmented reality.
And people with like cybernetics and stuff. But that's not the movie. And so I was kind of reminding myself as I'm watching it, like, don't think about the movie it isn't. Watch the movie as it is.
I feel like we could have those things now. Like, I feel like a lot of those movies could be right because, you know, apparently back in the day they patented the hydroelectric car and that got buried. Now we're, you know, it seems like electric cars are supposed to be the thing now. I can't remember how many times I heard, like, in the last 15 years, it's like, where's my friggin' flying car, you know? Because everyone thought they were going to have a flying car by the time they hit the 2000s. But it's like, I feel like we can have those things, but I feel like life is a lot like GTA 5. If it's still making money, then why progress forward? You know? And that annoys me. GTA 5's been out forever. I've already bought like 2 copies of the game myself.
Skyrim's getting its 10th anniversary DVD. Like, do you want a new Skyrim or do you want, like, Skyrim again?
If that horse keeps farting money when you hit it with the stick, then, like, why bother? But I feel like GTA 5... when it's stopped making money, GTA 6 will be announced the next month.
Yeah.
And then it'll be out like a couple of months after that. And then as soon as that stops making money, they've got to have games stockpiled. Like, did they close those studios down there? Like, everyone just go home. You guys that, like, make all the online content, y'all stay.
I don't know. Who knows? I am not versed enough in that field to know how long it really takes to squash bugs out of games like those.
No, neither do I. But
so, I mean, you think how long they're working on Cyberpunk 2077 for that to not be done when they release it.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's, to me, I guess watching that movie, keeping in mind that I was a kid who played, like, the Shadowrun game, Cyberpunk, like, all that other stuff, like, that to me, I thought was, like, a groundbreaking concept for that movie, especially like the double feeding the thing, so you're not only feeling what the person's feeling, but you're also what the attacker was feeling.
Yeah,
like I thought the movie was like, hey, you can feel people's emotions. Cool. Well, you can feel people's death too. That's cool. Well, now you can like double loop the thing, so you could feel 2 people's feelings. It's like, that's crazy.
Yeah,
you know, like. That was the thing I think I loved best about the movie. Plus, on top of it, you had the whole subplot going on with the cops.
Yeah.
Which
it kind of seemed like that was like the main one, but it kind of ended up being kind of like the second plot, and they kind of led into each other.
Well, it was like that was the nuclear bomb,
right? It was
right?
the catalyst.
Yeah, it was the bomb that he was carrying, and then like basically him playing duck, dive, and dodge the entire time, trying to get around him, and Angela Bassett trying to keep his ass alive.
Yeah.
And then you can't talk about this movie without talking like some of the cast. So I didn't realize that was Angela Bassett until you said it tonight.
Yeah. Well, it's when I was watching it, I'm like, man, I recognize her. And then when I looked it up afterwards, I'm like, oh, it's the Queen of Wakanda.
Okay. See, I didn't make that connection either. But yeah, no. Ray Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Juliette Lewis. She's not one of my favorite actresses in the world, but
I don't think I know her.
Yeah, she always. I don't know, like, I feel like she's not feeling the characters in most things. Like, even, like, the part where she's like, you know what I love best about real movies? The lights come up, the credits roll, and you know it's over. And then the way she screams, it's over! Like, I didn't believe that. But also, she's, like, playing him from another angle because she knows what's going on in the background.
And she wants to keep him out of it or whatever.
Yeah, but she's also trying to slightly keep him into it because she's kind of got to lead him to where he needs to go. Because she's in on what's going on.
Yeah.
Tom Sizemore, I think he's a brilliant actor.
Is he the one that played Eddie?
So yeah, he was the one that played Max, his buddy.
Okay.
His best friend.
Okay.
Then you had Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, he's one of the crooked cops, right? Yeah. With what's it, William Finkel?
Yeah, Fincher. Yeah. I thought that was crazy. Like, so one of my favorite things, and I've really turned my wife onto it here lately too, is I love going back and watching old movies that I might have seen before, but it's been like years.
And with actors that have blown up since then.
Yeah, like I think it was Dragonheart. But like the shitty little prince in that movie, when I went back and watched it again, it was friggin' Remus Lupin from Harry Potter. I was like, and that's like a dude that as soon as he starts talking, it's like it's fucking Professor Lupin.
You want to know another weird one?
What?
I went back and watched Cursed like this year with like Christina Ricci and stuff like that. You know who else was in that one? Nick Offerman. He was a cop.
Really?
And he had like a speaking line or two. And like when I watched it, I'm like, oh look, there's Ron.
Holy shit.
Ron Swanson.
I had no idea.
He's in Cursed.
Wow. I mean, see, that's a movie that if you asked me to go watch it, I'd go watch it like now.
Well, I think I've seen it very recently, and I don't think it's that faded in your memory. Me asking if you've seen it, well, yes, you have seen it.
I just remember one part, whenever she's hiding and they can't get her out, and then she's like, she's a bug-eyed, straw-haired, stupid bitch, and like the wolf jumped up and was like, fuck you, like that's the part. It was one of those scenes in a movie where when it happened, it was so LOL, like it was so funny that it's there forever. Yeah. Like I can't tell you anything else that happened in that movie, but that part I remember quite well.
So I mean, Cursed I don't know that people necessarily love it, but I think it's a good movie. So go watch Cursed if you haven't.
Yeah.
Christina Ricci, Jesse Eisenberg.
Eisenberg was in that?
Yeah. It had the guy who played. It's been a while since Heroes came out, but the Peter, he was remember the kind of guy that could like mimic other people's powers or whatever it was.
Siler?
No, it was like the other guy's brother, and he was like Peter something or other, and he ended up being like one of the main characters.
Oh, is it the dude? It wasn't the young guy. He was the older brother.
It was the younger brother. Yeah, the older brother and then the younger brother, and the older brother could fly, and then the younger brother was Peter. His character
Petrelli?
Maybe Peter Petrelli.
That was the last name.
Right.
Might have been Peter Petrelli, but he was the younger brother, and he's in that movie, and he's as the like the jealous boyfriend of a woman. So and then it had Sharon Elizabeth. It had
who's that?
Like American Pie.
And so it's not Flute and the Hoo Ha.
No, that's
Allison Hannigan.
But I mean, like Shannon Elizabeth was in it for a little bit. It was friggin' Scott Baio, Craig Kilborn.
Yes.
Who else was in it?
I gotta go back and watch this movie again. I didn't remember any of these people.
Portia de Rossi.
I know that name.
No, she was in Arrested Development. That's really what I know her from.
That's the sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she can get it.
She was nice.
Yeah,
but she was in the movie for a little bit.
I'm gonna have to go back to. Is that the movie you're gonna ask me to go see?
No, it's just because you've seen it.
Yeah, that's true.
You can watch this one in your own time. Just watch the unrated version because they made a PG-13 version. And when I watched it, I'm like, "Where's all the gore?" There was more gore than when I remember this. And like I was watching it on HBO Max, and the one on HBO Max is the PG-13 version. But I own the unrated version on DVD.
Then you're gonna have to let me borrow it because
I don't know what to let you borrow it, which is unrelated to Strange Days. But
yes.
Still, go watch Cursed. Maybe if you like werewolf movies.
That's good.
I mean, Christina Ricci. How can you go? She's lovely. I love Christina Ricci. Ever since Addams Family.
Black Snake Moan was like one of the worst movies I ever watched her in, but her and Samuel L. Jackson still made that movie.
Yeah.
But it's still, in my opinion, not a great movie. But not Stranger Days.
To the point of go back and watch old movies and see what the actors that you know and recognize nowadays are like.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to go back and just watch old stuff, and you're like, oh shit, that guy's in it. So
yeah.
But anyways, so the whole plot with what's going on with the singer, the cops, what Lenny's running around with, then the double cross, like there's a lot going on in that movie. What I had forgotten about, and it's one of my favorite lines from the movie, and I can't remember the guy's name, but I think he played Top Dollar in the Crow movie. And it's the guy who talks like this.
It's Philo.
Michael Wincott. Philo.
Okay.
One of my favorite lines in that movie was like Lenny basically keeps going back to see Juliette Lewis, and he's just like, "That's funny. I don't feel anything between y'all." Like I've always loved that line. But yeah, it had so many memorable lines. I thought that the concept back in the day was a pretty good one. I can't think of any other movie that was doing that kind of stuff back then. to me, it's one of those flicks that's just timeless.
Yeah, I mean it's still good. I mean, I like a good kind of mystery crime drama, and I didn't see like that who the villain was at the end of it. I didn't see that one necessarily coming.
Yeah, it was a good. Well, like
I guess I didn't pay enough attention to the friend to really think much of him.
well, I mean, the guy was like likable enough, and there were enough assholes in the movie to where it was like it was a good lead away. Like he wasn't super obvious. He played it pretty low key. But and then like when they were like reflecting about old times, you didn't see like any of that tensiony shit coming up. But then they kind of alluded to it where it basically seemed like Lenny was the kind of person who's burnt a lot of bridges in his past, used a lot of people, pissed off a lot of people, because like everyone sees him coming and they're just like, just get away from me. And that guy, Tom Sizemore's character, he had like no complaints. We're best buds, and me and you, it's like you. Now that I think about it, it's kind of like
you like go back and like think about like when it introduced him and he shows up while Lenny was trying to deal with a client. And he's like holding a gun to him, and you can kind of see that little bit of a psycho energy to him. But but like now we're buds.
Yeah, but so if you were to give it a rating, or did you want to cover some more stuff that you liked about it?
I didn't write down too much.
Right.
I wrote down like when he was selling the thing to the guy, the first taste is free, sort of set up.
It's like crack.
Like, well, let's talk about price. It was like, well, why don't you experience it first? And like, who do you want to be? And him just kind of going through. You can be with a girl, be with two girls, be with a guy. It's like and not cheat on your wife.
See, you were just a 17-year-old girl taking a shower.
Yeah.
And the dude's like, I just love how they're like
rubbing himself.
that was so good.
It's like, what is he doing? I'm like, oh, he's just taking a shower. I'm like, oh, I've never taken a shower to that extent, but I guess she recorded it for a reason.
Yeah. And the other part I liked was when people were like bringing in these videos and like the two girls that were like the two girls that were having sex on camera, and he was like, so next time could you have like a little bit more emotion to your face? And she's like,
no, it was look more slowly, because she was just kind of like looking around, and notice you have to pan your eyes like they're a camera sort of thing. So kind of like try to capture more of the image for the person who's experiencing it.
Yeah.
Don't just like flick your eyes around like a human normally would.
And she was just kind of like dead, kind of staring at him. I also like the idea that the squid goes on your head, so then they put the wig, and you always had like the really ridiculous looking wig on the head. Yeah, the wigs look
so bad.
Yeah, but like it couldn't be flawless, It had to have its like I think they said it replaced The Wire. Because then, like, if you can actually get a witness to go in there and see and feel, or not witness, but like a jury to see and feel what was going on, then it made it easier for cops. But then people started abusing it, and then it's like you said, like how much is this thing? Well, let's experience. So it's like crack.
Yeah.
The first hit's free, and then after that, I got your ass. So, no, that's a good point.
So I thought that was interesting. Like also during that scene, it mentioned that Lenny was like an ex-cop from the Vice Squad. So I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense, and also makes for a good, I guess, lead for like a mystery movie. It's like he used to be a cop. That's why he's doing all this stuff.
Yeah, so people couldn't just sit there and blow holes in it. Like, well, I mean, how would he have that knowledge of this, and why would he know that? Well,
also, like, why would he was in the Vice Squad? It's kind of like you start making connections with bad people when you're in the Vice Squad. Like, you know who's dealing what. So when you decide to start dealing yourself, you know right who to go to. And then I just kind of liked him being the kind of charismatic asshole that is kind of charismatic, but.
He's a douchebag.
Some people are just like over his shit. Even like the guy that had no legs and he just showed up like to talk to him, like they were friends, and he's like, "Dude, I got a thing just for you." And it's just like a guy running around so we could experience what it's like to run again. And you can kind of get the sense that he, if like you stay in it seems like he makes friends. Maybe he's not necessarily like super charismatic with some people, but like he'll make a connection and kind of like go back and keep him as a good contact.
Yeah. Well, it's like, in my impression of Lenny from that movie was like he's kind of like the douchebag with a heart of gold.
Yeah.
Like you could tell when he first went to go talk to the guy that was in the wheelchair, it was kind of like, oh, you're back again for this or that. And it's like, hey, I made this thing for you.
Yeah.
And like, that was very thoughtful. But like almost everyone who sees Lenny coming, they're like, I don't know what you're selling and I don't know what you're doing, but I don't want no part of it.
Yeah.
And then he has to talk his way back in the door,
yeah.
which I guess is good if you're like the consummate salesman. You could burn as many bridges you want to, as long as you could talk your way, get your foot back in that door, and that's what he did. But like, I like that his character was somewhat unlikable.
Yeah. But I could also see like he would show up at like the club and just be let in and all that kind of. You can kind of see that he was the man that knew people, and I just kind of like that.
Yeah. I think he did all of his business out of that club, so I think that's why they were just kind of like, yeah, come on in.
Yeah.
I think also Spaz was like one of the people that was like really big at that club as well. So the black market guy that was like feeding him the blackjack.
Yeah, okay, he was in the club too.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him. I remember that stash. Like, dude totally looked 70s. I'm like, this is in the 90s, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that dude straight up looked like he walked out of the 70s. Especially the van he was like selling stuff out of. Like that dude looked like he's straight up out of the 70s.
Then I wrote down Mace being a good friend. Because like at first you're like, oh man, she's like really... At that point, I wrote that down when she went to pick him up and was just kind of giving him like, dude, you're throwing your life away for this stupid shit. Like, and you can't be dealing to my clients and all this sort of thing. I'm like, man, she's really got his back. And only later do you find out that like she's into him.
Yeah, and has been.
And has been for a while. But like when he's like in his lowest and she's just kind of there to like try to pick him back up and be like, man, she's fucking awesome.
Yeah. And
to kind of like not take a shit.
Yeah, and she's trying to show him like whenever he was like having the fallout over Juliette Lewis's character, it's like there are other women out there that won't treat you like shit, you know. And then you find out that she was in fact into him. I think she was also a mother, and like that's the entire reason she was out there hustling, you know, like doing the bodyguard gig.
Her ex-husband was in jail, and Xander was her kid, because once he said that name, I'm like, oh, Buffy. But like, and I like the little flashback you get of how she met Lenny. Was like she was coming home and the husband and a friend or whatever were being let out, and she went in to go check on her son, and Lenny was in there just kind of like doing that sort of thing as the cop to be like, hey man, why don't you show me your Pokemon cards or whatever, and just kind of keeping the kid distracted as kind of all his life is falling apart around him, and you're just kind of letting him still be a kid, like explain this kid thing to me, and just kind of console the kid, and that by kind of letting him, and you can just kind of see that like she walked in, saw that, and appreciated him, and was probably appreciative of him for the rest. Like from then on.
Yeah, she knew he had a heart of gold. And then I think that's the thing that about Lenny's character is that, you know, he got kicked out of Vice, became a salesman, made a lot of money, and then like, you know, even like people who are really good people, sometimes they can get lost in that hustle.
I think he got addicted to his own memories, and then knowing from that addiction, he's like, well, I know how to feed other people's addictions too.
But yeah, I loved how much I'm a salesman myself usually, so like I love you know, watching the salesman characters go to work, and like I said, I can't name a lot of Ralph Fiennes movies, but I just loved him in this particular one.
Also, as someone that we played D&D in Shadowrun and in Cyberpunk, like Lenny seemed like, oh, Lance would play Lenny. Yeah. This is exactly the kind of person that Lance would play. The person who's like, I own a gun, but it's at home under my bed, and I don't want to hurt anybody, and let me be all charismatic and talk my way into all these issues. And I'd probably play the person more like Angela Bassett. Yeah. I'm gonna kick your ass and shoot you up and all that kind of stuff.
No, totally. But yeah, it's your next point.
I broke down flaming car into the water because that scene was kind of cool. That whole chase scene where they're driving on the docks being chased by the cops, and they were shooting them up, and then like the car had a pop tire. They go to the edge and they're like, oh no, we're about to fall into the water, so they start going back, and I'm like, they're gonna go into that water.
And then I think the cop car like pushes them in.
No, the cop car comes up, starts shooting the thing up. It's bulletproof, so okay. So they get gas cans, pour gas all over the car, then just light it up.
And then Lenny drives it into the bay, or Mace drives it into the bay.
Mace drives it into the bay, and then the car sinks like abnormally fast, but I guess it's armored, but still it's got air in it, but. It was still pretty cool. And then she goes to her back seat and's got a shotgun. I'm like, all right, she's connected.
Oh yeah, no, she knows what's up. Yeah, she's awesome. She's an awesome bodyguard.
And I guess I didn't write down much after that until the end of the movie, because I was kind of into this movie, and I was just kind of enjoying it. I think it started off kind of slow for me. This movie was like 2.5 hours, and I think you could have gotten much of the point. At the beginning with a bit, quicker. I think in having to introduce Braindance, they kind of maybe introduce a lot of them, maybe more than you necessarily need to. Maybe you could have cut some of that out. I think we could have got to the mystery a bit sooner, because the mystery kind of like the lady showed up and it's like, hey, Lenny, I need you to look at this thing, and then she's like 30 minutes go by before that comes back up again.
Well,
so I think that could, because we see her put a thing in the car gets towed. Well, at some point in time, he's going to go and find that thing in the car again, and that plot point gets put on the back for a long time to character build instead. they kind of go and build up the relationship with Mace and stuff a bit.
You got to kind of respect that a little bit, though, because a lot of movies are guilty of, like, overrunning character development. Like, there's a lot of movies you walk out of where you're like, I really kind of would like to know more about this character and that character.
I mean, it's nice. I think the plot could have gotten it started a bit sooner, I guess.
Yeah, I can definitely see your point on that one, but, like, you wouldn't have had the feels for Lenny like you did, or you wouldn't have had the feels for Mace like you did.
Yeah, maybe.
Even when Spaz died, like, I still kind of felt that one because I thought his character was just funny.
Yeah.
You know, like all-time rusher. Like I don't remember the lines, but when he's talking about Homeboy's bodyguard, and he's like all-time rusher, 32 points in this particular game, and he's like, "That's football, right?" And he's like, "No, that's ping pong." You know, like I just liked how sassy his character was, even though he was kind of a throwaway character in the movie. But I get it. I get what you're saying.
But so I mean, from like Car on, I was just kind of watching and enjoying it, and then like one of the last things of it was like when he had the knife in his back. And the guy went over the balcony and was holding onto his tie. I'm like, he's got a knife in his back. I know what's going to happen here. And then you let him reaching around to grab the knife out of his back to cut the tie and make the guy drop. I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted.
Hans Grubered his ass.
Yeah.
Except, you know, the knife was the watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about that part.
Well, it was during that time. I'm like, he's holding on to Mike. He's going to have to cut it with something. I'm like, oh, he's got the knife in his back. Is he going to cut it with the knife in his back? And him just like reaching back to pull out the knife to bring it around to cut it. And for the guy to be like, oh no. It was good. But I mean, yeah, I like that part.
So, do you have any other?
My last thing was produced by James Cameron. Just like, oh, it's produced by James Cameron. I didn't know this was it. I'd never really heard this movie before.
So I know that this was the one where I'm like, hey, Nick, have you seen? Mm-hmm. But I'm going to give my rating of the movie first, just so we can get the watermark here.
Yeah.
But Strange Days is one of those flicks that's, to me, it's timeless. I can go back and watch it as many times as, you know, I can. If I'm ever walking by the TV, it's on. I will sit down and watch it. I would easily give Strange Days an 8.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I know we said we weren't going to do 0.5s because 0.5s are lame.
Yes.
But, like, it's, you know, I'd say it's like a strong 7, not as strong 8. Like, and I know that's just another way of saying 0.5.
Yeah. So yeah. It's.
You know what? I'll just go ahead and commit and say 8.
Yeah. So from 0 to 10, just so 5 is nice in the middle. I feel like we have to say it every time because maybe this is the first video you're watching. Because 5 is nice in the middle. You got 5 numbers on the left, 5 numbers on the right. I'm kind of waffling between a 7 and an 8 myself. Just because, I mean, it's above average. I don't know if it's quite 8 level. Because, I mean, I don't know, 2.5 hours. And it took a little while for me to kind of get into it, which makes
So you're saying you felt the time?
I felt the time a little bit, I think. Which makes me think, but I enjoyed it more than most movies. So I'm thinking 7.
Okay.
But it could be a contender for an 8.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's tough when you get, like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of really terrible cinema out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally you do get some gems. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to kind of go back and compare old school movies with the kind of like the CG and stuff like that and some of the practical effects you get these days.
And you can definitely kind of feel like in some old movies, but like, how do we make guns feel futuristic? Make the gun sounds different. Like, it's still a gun. It's still shooting. It's not making bang bang noises. It's going.
It's still, the rifles in Aliens, they sound so cool.
Well, those ones sound like guns. I'm just talking about like if you go back and watch Firefly when they shoot the guns and they make them sound spacey, despite the fact that they're still shooting cartridges with bullet. Like, it's not a sci-fi gun because you change the sound and it still looks like a gun.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's what they did with the guns.
It's still a slug thrower.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So just make it sound like a gun. It doesn't need to sound of like a futury gun. So that seems like just a shortcut to be like, how are we going to make the gun sound futuristic? By changing nothing but the sound effect. Yeah. So I mean, you can feel the age a little bit.
But it's fair.
But it's good. I liked it.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm really stoked that you dug it because that was one. Like, there's a handful of movies. Like, I've actually been sitting around like really thinking about some of the stuff I want you to go back and watch.
Yeah.
Because if I'm being 100% honest with you, Strange Days, I haven't watched in a very long time, but I do know it is one of those movies that, like I said, when it's on TV, I sit down and watch it. I can still quote lines from it, even though I probably haven't seen it in like 10 years. And I have seen it on TV here and there, but it's not one that you see, and I don't get TBS anymore, and I think that's the one that used to run it like religiously.
I don't even get cable anymore.
Yeah, no, me neither. Everything's on the internet, but I was a little worried that it might have been a little bit more dated than I remembered, because I remember I had the argument with Joe about Transformers, where I love Transformers, and he was like, the cartoons sucked, and I'm like, shut your mouth.
The cartoon does suck, unfortunately.
It was, so I would have argued with you at that point, because I remember the conversation was, why did you get into Transformers? Because they're awesome. Well, they suck. No, it doesn't suck. The cartoon was awesome. And he was like, no, I think your mind's eye. I think that your mind's eye from your history is telling you it was awesome.
I would think it's, you remember playing with the toys and how awesome the toys were. And that there was a cartoon. And that because you played with the toys and the toys were awesome, the cartoon must have also been awesome.
The commercials were awesome too.
Well, you mean, by commercials, do you mean the cartoon?
They were just the longer commercials.
They were the animated commercials.
Yes. But yeah, I went back and watched the Transformers cartoon again. I watched like the first 3 episodes and I was like, wow, this show sucks.
Yeah.
But no account for taste.
Yeah. So I mean, the nostalgia factor kind of hit that one hard for you.
Yeah. And that's what I was worried about. I was worried about if the nostalgia of me loving that movie.
Yeah, was going to be.
And then you watching it. So I guess before I do the next, hey Nick, have you seen? I need to like go back and watch the movie again to make sure that.
It's I don't even know how you could see this one, because we saw let me borrow a DVD. Does it, like, you've still got the IMDb pulled up, right?
Yes.
Does it have a have you seen option of where you could watch it, or is it like just buy it on Amazon?
What?
Strange Days.
Strange Days.
Because on IMDb there's a watch.
It's available on Amazon.
So I think that means buy it on Amazon, not it's on Amazon Prime. So I think that is essentially buy the movie to watch it. It's not streaming anywhere.
It might be one of the free ones. Like, there's a lot of movies that I actually have up on Amazon. As long as you pay for Prime, you can watch a lot of the old school movies. So
I guess check it out on Amazon. I mean, if you can get it cheap enough, I mean, it's good enough. I mean,
he gave it a 7, man. That's at least like pay like Redbox, money for it.
If you can get like $10 to $15, I mean, that's or rent it. If you can rent it, even better.
And I'm sure they've done like some kind of like digital remaster at this point.
Yeah, because on the Blu-ray, it's one of those ones that is a full screen widescreen movie where it's still in the full screen ratio. They just squish it so it's taking up this much of my screen.
Right.
And I tried to like zoom it in as much as I could, but I couldn't really. So I think this one would benefit from watching it digital. Honestly, I mean, it's a crime thriller sci-fi. If that is what you're into, maybe buy it. If that maybe you're only into like, I kind of like crime, maybe rent it.
It has like Shadowrun elements. Like, they don't really, a lot of times they don't actually like talk about like wetware and stuff like that, but like they'll refer to it. So like you're in a future where like you have augmented like reflexes and stuff like that too. So they try to go a little future-y with it.
But it's mostly hidden in the we couldn't afford it department, I think.
Yeah, like the technology's gotten out of hand, but let's talk about it and reference it, but like let's not show it per se. But yeah, I'm glad you liked it, and it's one that I definitely recommend. I think it's a great movie. Yep. I'm probably gonna go watch it this week.
Yeah, if you want to sit down for 2.5 hours and watch like a couple decent characters, kind of solve a mystery.
I'm glad you liked it.
Although I guess that leads into the next question.
Oh shit!
Hey Lance, have you seen Man of La Mancha?
Is that Peter O'Toole?
Yes.
Is that the windmill one?
Yes. Don Quixote.
I know the story of Don Quixote, but I don't know if I've seen the movie.
Well, maybe you have seen it, but you won't remember it until you see it. But I'm going to make you watch that one, because that's another one I think is pretty good, and I think bears a watch.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down.
So if you want to watch it ahead of time and then sit down and see what we think about it.
I had another idea for a movie, like another movie idea that we can do. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about another thing. But
so, thank you for watching.
Yeah, man. And do stuff with stuff underneath if you want to do stuff.
Yeah. If
you're a grown-ass person, I'm not going to tell you what to do.
I guess a topic for the comments is we talked about old movies that with actors that have now gotten pretty famous.
Yeah.
Are there any good examples that you could think of that, like, hey, did you know this guy was in this old movie? Go back and watch it. I mean, that might be a fun thing to talk about.
Not only that, but like talk about stuff that when you were younger and they were like, this thing's going to be a thing and it's going to be everywhere, like flying cars and jetpacks and shit. Like, just give us a couple of examples of that too, because
like the Google Glass that was absolutely not a thing.
Yeah, but like not only were they talking about like flying cars and like, you know, robot maids and shit like that, but like I also remembered like the Prince song, when Tonight We're Gonna Party Like It's 1999. Like when it was 1999 going over to 2000, like you couldn't be comfortable with it because everyone was freaking you out about the Y2K virus and all this other stuff. So yeah, like still
Y2K wasn't really a big thing.
It was nothing. There was nothing. A whole bunch of worrying about nothing. But anyways,
yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Toodles.